Hello, good afternoon dear students. We shall go for the detailed Hindu news analysis. We shall be discussing today the Hindu dated June 15. I take it for granted that all of you have already applied for the regional rural bank examination. The last date is on June 28. You should not wait till the last date, and there will be data congestion. So ensure that all of you apply well in time. So we shall begin with the news analysis of June 15. This is the front page. G7 accommodates Indian stand on need for internet curbs. And government report flags lapses in Nagaland bat study. So G7 summit ended in Corbis Bay in England, group of 7 rich nations, and India was an invitee as a guest. India has made its stand clear on the balance between the internet freedom and the concerns of the state on security. We must understand that governments across the world are concerned about the freedom that people enjoy through the internet. Internet is the biggest community in the world. The Hindu points out the internet curbs that were imposed in Jammu and Kashmir ever since the abrogation of Article 370, which conferred special status to J&K and dividing J&K into 2 union territories of J&K and Ladakh. Consumer inflation quickens to 6.3%. Consumer prices index is hardening and has touched 6.3%. We shall discuss that news first. Inflation is nothing but rise in price for commoners. An economist will say that too much of money chasing too few goods. Inflation is desirable on many counts. Inflation is not a true villain. Inflation is needed. If inflation comes down to below tolerance level, then what will happen? People will stop spending money, they will start saving more money. So what will happen? When they start saving more money, their spending will come down. When the spending comes down, immediately the demand for goods and services will come down. That will lead to economic recession. So it must be at the optimum level, at a particular tolerable level. If that tolerance level is broken, then inflation will create problems to us, because it will move to, the economy will move to erratic price hike times, which may not be tolerable to people. Retail price inflation tolerance level fixed by RBI is 6%. 4% to 6% is a band, tolerance band of RBI. RBI has to frame its policy so that the inflation is in between 4% and 6%, but that is broken and has touched 6.3%. It's a 6-month high. It's a 6-month high. India's wholesale price index has soared to 12.94% in May. And what have played the villain? The rising fuel price and edible prices. In the last few months, oil prices went up like anything. Mind you, the diesel price has crossed 90 barrier and touched 94, 95 in many places in India, and petrol crossed even 100 rupees. When the diesel prices go up, it will create a kind of a cascading effect in the economy, and price will be increased across commodities. And during this time of pandemic, it eats up the buying power of money and buying power of Indian rupee and buying power of Indian consumers. So inflation, if it is to be contained, then what the governments have to do is reduce the taxes. Under the guise of the need for money to fight COVID, government, both the central government and state governments have increased the taxes on petrol and diesel. More than 60% of the price that we pay to purchase 1 unit of either petrol or diesel are by way of taxes. So India is the country with biggest taxes on petrol and diesel in South Asia. An elite club is the editorial of the Hindu. The editorial refers to the G7 summit, which is very important. So we shall discuss G7 summit here. G7 summit has sent 2 messages, says the Hindu editorial. What are the messages? One, to take lead role to include global democracies. That is the message number 1. To include global democracies, lead role has to be taken by G7. 2, consensus among 7 members to counter China. These are the 2 explicit messages that the G7 gave in the recent summit in Corbis Bay in England. G7 outreach and invitation to fellow democracies, India, Australia, South Korea and South Africa, and to have democracy summit. Look out for this particular summit later this year. What is that? Democracy summit. G7 has called for a democracy summit later this year to include India, Australia, South Korea and South Africa. A great omission has been Brazil, another big democracy from Latin America. Slogan for G7 summit, very important: build back better. Build back better. That is the G7 2021 summit slogan. Build back better. Consensus among 7 countries to counter China. China was criticized for 4 things. What are the things? 1, human rights record in Xinjiang and democratic freedoms in Hong Kong. We know that Hong Kong was a British colony, and it was in 1998 that Hong Kong was formally handed over to China on the condition that there will be 2 countries, 1 system. Sorry, 1 country, 2 systems. Hong Kong will be a part of China, that is 1 country. Hong Kong will be the part of China, no 2 countries, 1 single country, but 2 systems will prevail. While China will continue with its communism, Hong Kong will, or democracy will prevail in Hong Kong. That was what is called 1 country, 2 systems. But unfortunately, China has been usurping democratic rights of people, and for the past 3 continuous years, people in Hong Kong have been fighting for their democratic freedom. So China has been doing all its power, the power that it wields, trying to suppress Hong Kong's democratic aspirations. So that is one thing. Human rights record in Xinjiang and democratic freedoms in Hong Kong. 2, non-market policies and practices. Non-market policies and practices. World has been complaining all the time that China uses to inflate their currency value, deflate their currency value against US dollar to make their products cheaper so that they can sell their products to the world and earn foreign exchange. To improve their exports, China used to keep their or peg their currency value artificially at a lower level. So when the domestic currencies prices come down, it will help exports. Easy to understand, I shall tell you. $1 is equal to 70 rupee. consider that $1 is 70 rupee. So when a European, when an American or when a foreigner spends $1 here, they will be able to purchase goods worth 70. Suppose $1 is 80. Then when they spend $1, they can purchase goods worth 80 rupees in India. Meaning $1 is 70, $1 is 80. When $1 becomes 80 rupees, Indian rupees prices are coming down. So if you artificially peg the value of domestic currency at a lower level, that is a way to export, that is a way to import exports, improve exports, that is a way to improve exports. So China used to peg the value of their currency at a lower level, artificially peg the value of their currency at a lower level so as to improve or promote exports. This was one major complaint that USA had or has all these times. So that is another thing. And third one, concerns over its actions in China Seas. You see, China Sea is a major trade route, and China is usurping the authorities of other countries like Philippines, Indonesia, Australia, and China is trying to increase its influence in Chinese Sea and the trade route. China wants to control Chinese Sea. And the fourth one is demand for transparent investigation into origins of coronavirus. Coronavirus origin is still a confusing one. China continues to state that it is not an accident, man-made leak from its Wuhan Virology Institute. Rather, it is a natural phenomenon. But the world still has concerns, and the lab leak theory is still prevalent. So US President announced an investigation last week, and these are the four contentious issues with China. So that is why these 7 countries have made a consensus to counter China. So this is the essence of that editorial. Please read. This is the second editorial, numero uno, meaning number 1. This refers to Novak Djokovic victory in the French Open. Novak Djokovic has always maintained his wish to end his career with most number of Grand Slams. Listen, Djokovic, Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer are the champions of modern tennis. For the past 20 years, they have been dominating the world of tennis, and that is very obvious from the fact that Djokovic has won 19 slams while Rafael Nadal has won 20 slams. For the past 10-12 years, these 3 people have been dominating the tennis world. So it's within his reach now. What is his wish? He wants to end his career with maximum slams, Grand Slams. And it is well within his reach now because he is just one shot of the achievements made by Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer with 20 slams. So 2 more Grand Slams are there for this year. Wimbledon and the US Open are yet to happen. So it is very much within his career, and he has got a few more years. He is 34 years old now. He has got a few more years of tennis within him. With his second French Open title, this year's 2021 title was his second. With this title, Djokovic has become the only 3rd man in history and first in modern era. What is modern era? Post 1967 is known as the modern era of tennis, to win 4 slams at least twice. So he is the only man in the modern tennis era to win 2 slams, every slam at least twice. So that's it. That's about the second editorial of Hindu, commenting the performance of the Serbian Novak Djokovic. Preserving India's archives was a center page article, a beautiful one we all should read, and this refers to Government of India's plans to demolish the annex of the National Archives in Delhi as the Government of India's plans to the Mammoth Central Vista project. National Archives is the primary depository of documents on India's past, and National Archives is situated in Delhi. It keeps archival records of 4.5 million files, 25,000 rare manuscripts, more than 10,000 maps, treaties, and 280,000 pre-modern documents and several thousand private documents. Listen, these show the history of this particular country. India is a country with a lot of history, and these sort of valuable treasures documenting our past are kept in the National Archives. National Archives has come into limelight for the imminent demolition of its annex by the Government of India as a part of the Central Vista project. Central Vista project is a multi-crore project to build a new parliament building, a new house for Prime Minister, and a new official house for the Vice President of India. This particular project is widely criticized by opposition politicians and many economists, for it is a wastage of money, especially when the country is going through pandemic and when people don't have money in their hands. And National Archives is going to be one of the victims of this project. It's a very important monument. It's a natural place for visit for anybody who visits Delhi. Now, Nato meet. Nato means North Atlantic Treaty Organization. I shall briefly tell you about Nato. Listen, in 1945, after the ending of the World War, the United Nations organizations began. The main purpose of the United Nations organization was to stop the world from plunging into another world war, which humanity could not afford to. So what happened after 1945, with the establishment of United Nations organizations, there was no world war or a war of that scale. But that doesn't mean that the world went into total peace after 1945. In fact, what happened was that the world got divided into two poles. And those poles were the American Western allies and the Eastern Bloc. America and its Western allies made NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization. On the other side, the communist nations came under the leadership of the erstwhile Soviet Union. They were called Warsaw Pact countries. Warsaw is a place in Poland. It was in Poland that these countries signed an agreement to come together. So mind you, these two alliances virtually split the world into two. Other nations had no option but to align with either NATO or the Eastern Bloc. So what happened? There was no open war. Even though there was no open war since 1945, these two blocs have always been suspectful of each other and were preparing for a war. Even though there was no open war, they were preparing for war. So what happened? They accumulated huge pile of weaponries to beat the possible war from the attack from the other party. So nations which were supposed to spend their wealth on the welfare of their people were spending money in accumulating weaponries. So more people died of hunger through that so-called Cold War era that spanned from 1945 to 1990, that Cold War era, more people died in the Cold War era than the total people who died in both the First and Second World War putting together. So that was the brief story about Cold War. So I hope you know what is NATO. Now, last year and during his reign, Donald Trump, the then American president, was saying that America would pull out of NATO. Now, Joseph Biden, the new president, has reversed his policy, saying that he considers the sacred obligation under Article 5. Under Article 5, the sacred obligation to protect Turkey, Canada and Europe. What is Article 5? Article 5 provides that a NATO ally, if a NATO ally is the victim of an armed attack, each and every other member of the alliance will consider this act of violence as an armed attack against all members and will take actions if deemed necessary to assist the ally attacked. Meaning, if any one of the members of the ally is attacked, it would be equivalent to or tantamount to attacking all of us, and we will retaliate. That is Article 5. And he says that Article 5 is a sacred obligation, which is a clear-cut reversal of the Donald Trump policy. Article 5 was invoked only once, and when was that? It was after the September 11 attack of the Twin Tower of Manhattan, the World Trade Center. The Twin Towers of the World Trade Center that situated in Manhattan were attacked by Al-Qaeda, led by Osama bin Laden, on September 11, 2001, and America declared war on terror, and the entire NATO force went on an attack to catch Osama bin Laden, and that is how America and NATO forces landed in Afghanistan to catch Osama bin Laden, who was supposedly hiding in the Tora Bora region of Afghanistan, but American forces could not locate him there. Finally, only a few years ago, 10 years ago, that Osama bin Laden was finally, during the tenure of Barack Obama, Osama bin Laden was finally located in a place called Abbottabad near Pakistan capital Islamabad, and he was killed. So it was the only occasion when Article 5 has been invoked. It means Article 5. Article 5 of NATO was invoked only once. This particular action of showing allegiance to sacred obligation is a major departure from Donald Trump's threat to exit from NATO. USA is concerned about Chinese military rise and its growing influence. This is what we just spoken. America and many democracies in the world are concerned about Chinese growing Chinese influence in the world. So I hope you have a brief idea about Cold War and what NATO is all about. So I am proceeding. Dear students, thank you very much for watching the program. We will have this on a continual basis, so that you will have a good idea about things, and this should not be an end. This is a means to know more. So please read and spend good quality time reading the newspapers. That is the only way to improve your language. I used to tell my students that if you want to improve your language, the way is not to learn the language, but the way is to use the language more. Unless you are prepared to use the language more, you cannot expect yourself to improve the language. I know that while students were studying here for our regular classes, many students would come and tell me, used to tell me that so my English is poor. English is poor. Okay, English will continue to be poor if you are unwilling to use English language. So, there is only way out to improve your language, use the language more. How can you use the language more? Read more, listen to English more, write more and speak more. There is no other go. So, it is a very small effort on my side to increase your enthusiasm to read more. So, read the newspapers more. I am very sure that your English will improve, your general awareness will improve, and your chance for succeeding these exams will definitely improve. We will meet at 3 o'clock again for another live session of math, English or reasoning. Please await that. Thank you very much. Goodbye.